LSD is a drug that sometimes causes insanity in people who have not taken it. Timothy Leary. I'm John Rose. And in today's video, I'm going to take a closer look at plant entheogens, or psychedelics, or hallucinogens. These are plant substances or chemicals that are very close to our neurotransmitters, serotonin. And people have used these substances throughout the ages to have a spiritual awakening, to have epiphanies, to have a paradigm shift. Interestingly, in 2013, they did a study with cancer patients, and they found those that participated with the psilocybin clinical research reported less anxiety, improves quality of health, enhanced psychological and spiritual well-being, and were better able to deal with the situation they were in, with the life changes that come with something as serious as a diagnosis of cancer, which means we got to make some life choices, or changes rather. They've also found in that same year that psilocybin mushrooms, the magic mushrooms, were able to repair DNA damage in the brain and actually promote neurogenesis, actually promote new brain cells, just as does marijuana. It also promotes neurogenesis. It's interesting and sad at the same time that the powers that be have considered these substances illegal because they help us think outside the box. In comparison, the drugs they want us to take, they are damaging to our brain, they are harmful to our health, and they keep us inside the box. Oh, I got me something trying to get inside my ear right now. And when it comes to marijuana, for example, it does not even occupy the dopamine receptor site, so you can't even become addicted to marijuana physically. Psychologically, obviously, that's a different story. But they claim that's supposed to be a gateway drug, and that's why it's illegal. And look at how beneficial the plant marijuana is, and they have the nerve to call it a drug, and they have the nerve to call a mushroom a drug. Well, if you want to get technical, I guess you could say our body's made of drugs, chemicals. Everything's a chemical, right? In that respect. But to have a war on those type of drugs is a trick. The real war on drugs should be on the prescription drugs. It's a ruse to get us to think we're solving our drug problem when the biggest drug problem we have on this planet has to do with the people who are in charge. And they use poisons in the name of health. And we know that's killing us. We know in America, conventional medicine is the #1 cause of death. And a big reason is because of the drugs they use that kill and harm us. And yet, if you got a joint or you got a little mushroom, they'll want to throw you in jail, make you a slave to the nth degree. We're already slaves as it is, the way the system's set up. But in this other situation, we actually have bars we can see now. And it definitely is a whole different type of slavery, isn't it? But it doesn't matter. Except it's harder to know you're a slave when you can't see the bars. As Goethe meant, none are more hopelessly a slave than those who falsely believe they are free. And one way a lot of people escape this cave of ignorance that we're in is through an experience like ayahuasca, or psilocybin mushrooms, or peyote cactus, and even with substances that aren't as natural as something like LSD. People can still have that type of experience with these plant-derived substances. It's I'm not saying that this is the solution for us to get out of the illusion we're in. I'm not telling everybody to go out there and have a go get some peyote buttons and eat some peyote or have an Anushka experience, Anushka. In fact, let me digress for a moment, because I remember when I was in line at Whole Foods one day, back in 2003, back when I was doing a lot of research on addictions, especially crack cocaine, and a magazine caught my eye, and it was on this Amazonian herb that they use, and they were saying this is a great way for people to break the crack cocaine addiction. Because when we do crack cocaine, it damages our frontal lobe where we make our decisions, and it's one reason why that drug is such a hard drug to overcome, because it damages the part of the brain that's going to help us make a better decision. And they're seeing a lot of positive results with this Amazonian herb, Ayahuasca. Again, these plants have things inside of it that are very almost identical to our own neurotransmitters, and they open up the doors of perception. In fact, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, most of y'all are familiar with that book. He was part of some mescaline experiments and published a book in 1954 called The Doors of Perception, where Dr. Humphrey Osmond was doing research on mescaline. And Aldous Huxley said, I'll be part of this experiment, and then he wrote this book on it, The Doors of Perception. That's what entheogens do. They open up the doors of perception. They help us see things that we couldn't see before because we're in an altered state. And it's not like it's an unnatural altered state. It's just changing the chemicals slightly. And it reminded me of a story I saw on, I believe it was PBS many decades ago. These, I believe they were along the Amazon somewhere, and they were looking at these toads, and as a result, they became better hunters. They could see better. It heightened their hunting experience. And you well know I don't advocate hunting or licking toads either, which was my previous video, where I tried to use that as a parable to help us understand how if one person acts up because of something we're all doing, then we all got to change. Because a lot of us can behave quite okay, relatively speaking, despite the fact that we have 2 huge strikes against us. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch my previous video about stalking the psychedelic toad. We're just playing around with y'all on that one, obviously. But obviously, plant entheogens have a place as the human experience. Again, to help open up the doors of perception, to help us see things in ways we haven't been able to see because we've been put inside boxes. So one way we can think outside the box is to use nature in various ways. And I don't want to come off as if I'm promoting these things and then be blamed for someone doing it. Because it is illegal. Isn't that pathetic? It's illegal to use natural things to help us think outside the box, to help us have a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening, a paradigm awakening. Because that's what you hear when people do these type of things. Interesting example is with Dr. Andrew Weil. I remember hearing him one day share his experience with LSD in college, and after he had done that, he no longer was allergic to cats. Try to explain that one off. Was it psychological or what? How did he manage to overcome a cat allergy by taking an entheogen? Interesting. Well, folks, how do I wind up this video? When you can find some magic mushrooms, you're in for a treat. When you can find some peyote, you're in for a treat. What's your drug of choice? And it's not a drug, it's a plant. What's your entheogen of choice? That's how we'll go with this video. Share your experiences in this comment section on this video on how this has affected you either positively or negatively, because it can affect people in a negative way to an extent. Because the one thing these things do is it throws your shadow right back at you, which can be a good thing, and it's actually what we need to do. It's kind of how marijuana works. It's sort of like defragmenting the brain. Remember what Carl Jung said about our shadow, those unwanted aspects of ourselves that we don't want to remember. We have a very selective memory. We sweep all that garbage in the back. It's part of denial, so we don't go crazy. It's a defense mechanism. So we sweep all that stuff in the back, and we see so much on a daily basis, especially if you're in a big city like Houston, or you don't have to even be in this big of a city. If I was to go to a sporting event, I'd see tens of thousands of people. My mind would have all those images in my brain. And then what marijuana would do is it would take all those images and throw it in the back because they're not that important. And then it grab that stuff I've been hiding way back there and throw it back up at me and go, oh my God, I've been ignoring that topic. Well, that's what the entheogens do also. It's the same concept. So people can have what you call bad trips when you do these type of things because the shadow's going to be thrown up at you. And the most fascinating thing of all has to do with the power of the mind. Because whatever you think going into an experience like that is going to determine the experience you have. If you think it's going to be hell, should have thought of something better. If you thought you were going to laugh the whole time, you could be laughing. Because that's what they do. It lightens you up. That's what being enlightened is all about. You become happy. That's why when you do something like the magic mushrooms, you laugh. You get in tune to the simplicity of nature. You see how it is, and now you're happy. And that's because we're seeing things with a different perspective. You know, it's not easy to see things from a different perspective, is it? You have to put a lot of energy into even thinking about what someone else might be going through if you were in their situation. A lot of people don't take that time to do that. And of course, if our biophoton levels were up, we'd feel it and sense it and would be affected by it immediately. And that's, I guess, why I'm so passionate about correcting the fall of mankind. Because we shouldn't have to have a new spiritual awakening, so to speak, to see the simplicity that we are all one, that what we do to ourselves and what we do to others affects all of us. And therefore, we don't have a right to harm ourselves or harm other people. It's a simple concept that is understood when you simply stop cooking your food. That's really what it's all about, my friends, is making a mistake, having problems, being stuck in a box, trying to figure out how to get out of that box, having various spiritual awakenings. Hopefully with the ultimate understanding of what's most important. And the one thing that's the most important thing on this planet is that there are way too many people suffering. Way too many people suffering. This very moment, when you think about it, how many people are suffering? It's maddening. How many animals are being slaughtered this very second? It's maddening. This whole planet is a sick experience. When you understand it doesn't have to be that way. It's not supposed to be that way. We're not supposed to be slaughtering animals. We're not supposed to be eating animals. We're not supposed to be suffering. We're not supposed to be fighting with one another. We should be living in paradise, enjoying what nature has given us. Plants that help us see sound waves. Plants that can help us see the details on leaves that are 100 feet away. The mind's very powerful. And very few people get a chance to see its potential in the society we're in right now. That's why we got to do something about reaching the tipping point. Because if we can reach the tipping point and things would change, then we'd be spending our day totally different. We wouldn't be thrown in jail if we decided to get some peyote or some magic mushrooms or make some carrot and marijuana juice to help heal ourselves. It'd be paradise, which is simply a place where we don't have all these problems that are within our control. Well, folks, really don't know what else to say in this video. What can I say? What can I say? Try your best to think outside the box. Try your best to empty your cup. That's probably the most important thing we can do. We gotta realize most of our references that support most of our beliefs are wrong. On so many levels, it's frightening. And yet, if you were to have one of these type of experiences, that could all change in an instant. It could all make sense so quick because you can see the simplicity of everything. That's the greatest thing about the message that I teach people. It's self-evident. We can prove it to ourselves. We see the transformation we go through. We see the transformation other people go through. And when we can visualize a day where the whole world is transformed, will be the day we're all in for a treat.